Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. This is Gray Matter. I'm your host, Leighton Gray. Well, this is the day that the Lord has made. Let's rejoice in it. We have a great reason to rejoice today. We have a great guest on the show today. He's Rabbi Michael Barclay. He's the host of the radio show and podcast, The Rabbi's Table, Dialogue Not Debate. It's on CRN Digital Talk Radio, where he leads bold conversations on religion, freedom, Israel, America, and today's most pressing cultural issues. That's a lot, Rabbi. You cover a lot of ground, don't you?
Well, it's kind of the clergy thing to do. And thank you for having me on, Leighton, and thank you for all that you and your audience do for the world.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I've been looking forward to this conversation. I have to say, this is the first time I've ever got to sit down, at least virtually, with a rabbi. And honestly, it's something I've always wanted to do. And hopefully that'll come out in some of the questions that I have for you.
We
Well, the
we
first
can
one
do
is
it
this.
anytime. I'm both online or offline. I am always here
Well,
to be there and have dialogue with you.
that is very gracious. I may take you up on that.
Please.
But let's start here. You're a widely read columnist and Torah commentator. You've been published in PJ Media and the Jewish Journal. You're a founder of pioneering no-do synagogue model, internationally sought after lecturer on Judaism, ethics, and public life. What led you into the world of podcasting?
I didn't want to be there. Honestly, that's the honest answer. For about 15 years, people have asked me to do radio shows and podcasts. And I've repeatedly said, no, I have a congregation, I have a family, I do a lot of writing. As you said, I'm a columnist for PJ Media. I write for American Thinker. I write for American Greatness. For a lot of different places. I do a lot of speaking. And especially since October 7th, I mean, I write an email that goes out every day at 3 a.m. since October 7th about what's really going on.
Is that for your audience in Israel?
It's for our congregation and for a few thousand other people. If someone goes to the rabbistable.com, they can go through the site and sign up for it. It's about what's really going on in the Middle East because American media does not report it at all accurately. So I have a busy life, thank God. As all clergy, I marry and bury, so that keeps me busy too, as well as the congregation. But a little bit ago, a man named Michael Horn, you may know his daughter, Jennifer Horn, from Salem. I was speaking at something with Jennifer, and Michael came up and said, look, Rabbi, we really need to do a podcast. You need to do a radio show and a podcast. So Michael, everyone says that. I don't want to do it. I don't generally like the medium. It seems to be filled with too many grifters, too many people who are doing whatever they can that's incendiary to get whatever views. When my grandmother, God rest her soul, turned 90, I bought her web TV, and we went on the internet. This is in the early 90s. And afterwards, I said, Grandma, what did you think? And she said, this is either going to save the world or destroy it, and I'm glad I'm not going to be alive to see which. And I think her words, her words were the wise words of an elder. And so I really have kind of stayed away from the medium. Michael Horn pointed out, he said, there's just not real, authentic Jewish voices out there. Dennis Prager, we know what happened to him, and it's very sad. But he's, he's out of it. Charlie was killed. There aren't a lot of real. There are political voices that happen to be Jewish, but not a lot of authentic Jewish voices who also do politics. And so that's how he convinced me to do this. And so we started. We've had in only the few weeks we've been on, it's a weekly show. Had Alan Dershowitz and Dinesh D'Souza and Brandon Tatum and Tommy Robinson and Ambassador to Israel. So, having some good dialogue that's a little different than most of the stuff you see out there.
One of the things that I've really been looking forward to ask you about is I'm sure you've noticed a rise of anti-Semitism in the culture, especially in the West. And I view this as a bellwether, as a sign that something is really wrong in the culture. Because if you look historically, anti-Semitism is one of those signs, we're moving the wrong way. And I'm curious about, and it's happening here in Canada in our universities, and even in our media. And it's also being turned now on Christians. Christians now are sort of running neck and neck with Jews for the most persecuted people globally. What do you think is driving or causing sort of the rise of this anti-Semitism in the West in places like the United States and Canada and elsewhere?
I think, first of all, you're 100% right. This is the worst Jew hatred, and I prefer that term as opposed to anti-Semitism,
Okay.
because it's actually religious, which is why it also comes out and it's being manifest as well as a hatred towards observant Christians. And I often say
Yeah.
I have more in common with my friend Pastor Rob McCoy, a devout Christian, than I do with a secular Jew, because both have
Yeah.
faith in God. Um, I think that it's happening for a number of reasons. You're right. It is how anti-Semitism, Jew hatred is the canary in the coal mine, because
Yeah.
Jews are always the minority wherever they are, except in Israel, and they always have been for 2,000 years. And we live differently, we eat differently. There's different. We celebrate the Sabbath on a different day. It's the easiest minority to persecute, so it's always the first one that's persecuted. It's always the first one
Mhm.
that's blamed. And you have two factors, I think, at least two factors going on right now on why it's been so increased. Number one, um, you have this whole issue of people not being happy and wanting to blame somebody, and you have these social influencers, these anti-Semites, these Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes,
Yeah.
the Hodgkins,
Yeah.
these people who are truly ignoramuses,
Yeah.
who are doing whatever they can, and whether they're bought and paid for by Qatar or not, I I don't know, but I do know that what they do is evil. Um,
Mhm.
and you have that combined with the fact that for 1,400 years there has been a war from Islam onto Western culture, and
Mm.
they don't view. I was a professor of theology at Loyola Marymount University, and if you really look at the Quran and the Hadiths, then you see that this is not a battle that's just started in the last 2 months with Iran. It's not a war that started on October 7th. This is a 1,400-year war, of which these are merely the latest battles. Because the Quran is very clear. Its goal is to create, it's not a spiritual document. It's a document to create a worldwide caliphate of Sharia law.
Mm.
And so this war has been going on. So you combine these pandering social influencers with this real intense effort to create this worldwide caliphate, and you've got this alliance that's crazy. And then you
Yeah.
add to it sideways um, the far the Yiddish word is mashugana. They're these nutsy people who call the Pope Peter's usurper and who want to go back to
Yeah.
the medieval Crusades. And that's
Yeah.
sort of this alliance going on. Um,
Yeah.
so it's all, and then you also toss in the alliance of the Marxist world, because
Mhm.
again they're
Mhm.
anti-religion. So they just figure,
Yes.
okay, we'll ally with Islam. So I think all those factors coalesce and have created a myth, this Jew
Mhm.
hatred, this hatred for Israel.
Yeah.
Um,
And all that really puts, October 7th and the war in Iran in a very different light though, doesn't it? I mean, because you're so right. You say, "Well, we don't get correct information," and of course, you're working very hard to change that. But just in that last answer, there's a half dozen things in there I had no idea, that are really brand new because I've never heard them before. And so, that really puts, what's happening globally, especially in the Middle East, um, in a whole different context. It's more of a good and evil situation than just a geopolitical one. Do I have that right?
you absolutely do it. I believe this is a war between good and evil.
Yeah,
And there's good and evil on both sides. I mean, the fact that the Muslim
sure.
tradition has certain values does not mean that all Muslims do. I have dear friends who are Muslim. I have, people are
Right.
people. The
Yeah.
fact that Judaism and Christianity have good values, there's some real jerks who are both Jewish and Christian. Um, but
Amen.
to realize it. So here's a great example, and you may or may not know about this. In the California legislature, I don't know if you're familiar with AB 2017. Um,
Yeah, I have heard a little bit about it.
This is so the California legislature has gone through two. It's a bill for the legislature. It's gone through two subcommittees where it was passed unanimously. We have a supermajority of Democrats in Sacramento. The bill is to create two holidays, or to take two Islamic religious holidays and make them official state holidays. This is a problem on
Mm,
multiple levels. Number one, no other religion has religious holidays as state holidays. There's no Ash
right.
Wednesday, no Good Friday, no Rosh Hashanah. Christmas is
Yeah.
actually a federal holiday, and it's not a religious holiday. It was created during President Grant's term as a holiday of family togetherness. Um,
Mhm.
but there's no state holiday like this. And so that's problem one. Problem two is if it's a state
Yeah.
holiday, that means that all of our students in public schools need to learn about it, which means they need to learn Islamic theology when they're not learning Jewish or Christian. Problem three, and
Mm.
this is in some ways as big as anything else, is what these two holidays are. One is a
Yeah.
celebration of the end of Ramadan, which Al Qaeda calls the month of conquests. It's about celebrating all the wars and victories that were done during Ramadan. Ramadan is not a month of peace. Muhammad started two wars during that month. So that's one holiday. The
Yeah.
other holiday
Mm.
is translates to the Feast of Sacrifice, and devout Muslims are to do two things besides say prayers on this holiday. They're to throw stones, rocks at a wall to practice stoning Satan and his infidel army. That's us, by the way.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
number two, they're to do animal sacrifices. Over 50 million animals are slaughtered every year on this one day worldwide. In Pakistan, over
Wow.
9 billion. In Bangladesh, over 13 million animals are killed on this one day. And this is what California wants to make an official state holiday. It's
Wow.
really the attempt of making California and America part of this worldwide caliphate and Islamization
Mm.
of the nation and of the state. This is not a war about Israel. This is not a
Mhm.
war about land. This is a war about theology. It's a war about God. And it's 1400 years old from their point of view. We need to
Mhm.
recognize that, I think.
Yeah. Otherwise, we're really not equipped to deal with what's happening or what's coming, are we?
No.
I was listening to some episodes of your podcast and some of the really interesting discussions you had about Passover and Holy Week. And I really learned a lot. You highlighted the concept of faith and obedience over mere identification markers. And you also did an interesting job of kind of reconciling the distinct theological claims of Judaism, Christianity in that context. But you did a nice job of maintaining kind of respect for the traditions and highlighting the kind of complementary paths. How did you come about to that understanding in order to communicate that on your show?
Well, the show was a great show with my friend Bishop Mendez, who is the founder of Churches in Action, which is over 2,000 churches that do work around the world. In fact, he has been asked, Bishop Mendez has been asked to run as president of Guatemala. An amazing,
Really?
amazing man, yeah, and a dear friend. Look, I don't. If I've always believed that if God accepts how we all pray, who am I to not accept it?
Right.
And I have no question that for any devout Christian or Catholic, that Jesus is their pathway. I'm totally good with that. And that doesn't mean he's my pathway, but I accept he was a prophet, he was an enlightened being. I don't personally believe he was God, is God.
Yeah.
But I
Hmm.
do believe that the Messiah will come, hopefully in our time. And I'm going to say
Right.
welcome, and you're going to say welcome back. We're all going to accept him. I believe God is a God of love, and if we are acting righteously, and he's going to accept all of us. So I don't think, if God is infinite, which we believe he is, he, she is, however you want to view it, right? But if God is
Right.
infinite, then I can't I can't grasp all of what God is. So
Right.
if you kind of view it, I learned this from an indigenous people at one point many, many years ago, that if you view God at the center of a circle and a circle around it with all the religious pathways, Judaism, Christianity, Hindus, Buddhists, etc., and they're all like a bicycle wheel with spokes going to God, and that's their pathway. As you get deeper and deeper into any one of them, you see more similarities than you do differences.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so I
Hmm. Hmm.
really, I as I say, if God accepts how we pray, who am I to not? And so I totally, I taught at a Jesuit university. Even long before that, I would always make it a point to go to Christmas Mass. I don't,
Hmm.
I go to a Catholic church and I wouldn't take the wine of the way for the communion, but I would go because I want to enhance everyone else's prayers too.
Yeah.
I really
Yeah.
think that's important for us to respect
Hmm.
and to recognize that if each path is its own color, we don't try and just blend them into one whatever, but we really treasure each path. You make a rainbow,
Hmm.
and I
Hmm.
think that's part of the beauty of prayer and the beauty of life and the beauty of how we walk in this world with God.
Yeah. Well, speaking as a Christian, I mean, we can look no further than Jesus's own words, because as you know, he was a scholar of the Old Testament.
So he was a great rabbi.
I mean, we're as a Christian, we're supposed to be. He's our example. So as Christians, we should embrace the Jewish history and, of course, the all the teachings in the Old Testament. So I really like the idea of looking for the similarities because we have so many, as opposed to focusing on the things that we don't disagree about that often lead to things that are really bad places to go. So I really appreciated what you did there, and I think we need more of that. But speaking of people who want to stir up a lot of trouble, you also talk a lot about the woke right, and you mentioned people like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, who we could label them woke right influencers. I think that's probably correct. You might disagree, but I'm interested to know what specific ideological shifts within modern conservatism concern you the most, and how do you believe that traditional Jewish values or Christian values, for that matter, can effectively counter the, let's call it, performative activism that often characterizes that kind of political discourse that you get from people like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes and others.
Well, okay, so let's back up a little bit. I was actually the first person to publicly write about and call out both Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson as anti-Semitic.
Really?
Yes.
Bravo. Bravo.
For which my Twitter account got canceled, for which I got so many death threats and hate mail from their fans that I got a phone call from the local chief of police saying, Rabbi, I want you to get a gun, get trained, and I will immediately get you a CCW. They're down to incredible
Unreal.
threats. And this was all from their followers.
Wow.
People set up icons. There's one God. Doesn't matter how we view it, there's one God.
Yeah.
And
The one true God.
One true God. And when you start setting up icons and trusting those icons more than you trust the faith and trust God, you have now done literally avodah zarah. You've done idol worship. And that's what fans are. Remember, fan is a shortened version of fanatic. And they're extremely dangerous in so many ways. But I called it out, 2.5 years ago over that. And the simple system, Candace was obvious because of all the comments she was making. And then Tucker Carlson, when he interviewed Candace, actually he made a moral equivalency between what happened on October 7th and the fentanyl crisis. And both are horrible. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
But one is composed of people choosing to do this drug. One was people being raped, killed, murdered, etc., not of their choice. Two very different things. The fact that you could set up an equivalency told me that who this man is and what his values are.
That's frightening and misleading.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
And so I think this is and part of the problem in the conservative movement, I believe, is that we have, as any movement always does politically, we have a number of people who are panderers. And if they believe they can get an endorsement from Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson and get 5 million votes, they will pander to that. Because their beliefs are not about beliefs. Their beliefs are what's going to get me in power, what's going to get me in office. And these guys are very, very scary. It's interesting that people like Candace Owens or the Hodge twins or the Shields or Tucker Carlson, they have more followers than there are Jews on this planet. Yet they blame us for everything in the universe. And they're ignorant.
Wow.
They're truly ignorant. They're ignorant of history. They're ignorant of their own theology. They're ignorant of pretty much everything. I can speak clearly about Candace, and she's a vacuous young woman who's just a grifter and always has been. I'm sorry. If you look at her history or biography, she has grifted from being a liberal suing her high school to being, realizing at some point after training at a magazine had a brand. She's very shrewd, but she's really very ignorant. Carlson, again, he's great when he's reading lines. He seems very charismatic. They kept him in check at Fox. But then when he started Turner or Carlson Broadcasting Company, and he started this with Pakistani money, he suddenly became a whole other kind of being because there were no boundaries put on him by anyone else. And,
Yeah.
these guys are dangerous, and they're dangerous to the conservative movement,
Mhm.
because they empower the far left in
Yeah.
reaction, and they end up
Yeah.
merging together with the far left in their same actions, what they want to do. Um, it's dangerous. Thomas
Do you think
Mappy is
they've reached
dangerous. Ted Cruz
do
is
you think
brilliant.
they've reached a do you think they've reached a point where they might be politically toxic to the point where, politicians might not go near them? Or,
I pray
is it
so.
worse than that?
I
Is it
pray
is
that
it
that's
is
the
it worse than
case,
that? Yeah.
but I,
Yeah.
I don't know that it is. Honestly, Leighton, think about it. Up until recently, J.D. Vance was employing Tucker Carlson's son.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
he was his deputy press secretary. That kind of
Yeah.
says something, doesn't it? Um,
Yeah, it does.
you know, you look at how how Candace and Tucker have attacked TPUSA and Charlie and that whole organization.
Mhm.
Because Charlie was always very clear, and TPUSA with Erica and Mikey are very clear
Yeah.
about staying true to their values.
Yeah.
And so they're attacked. This is dangerous, and it splits the conservative movement. It makes it very dangerous for what's going to happen post Trump, and we need to be aware of
Mhm.
that. I mean, every day I thank God for Secretary Marco Rubio, because he's brilliant and he's committed to what he does. I,
Yeah.
I'm very concerned about it. Yeah, it's very scary.
Yeah. Well, I want to turn to maybe talk a little bit about some of your views on geopolitics and eschatology. We got into this a little bit earlier, but given your recent updates on the Iran situation and your writings on what we call the war on good versus evil, I'm curious, how do you interpret some of the current Middle Eastern tensions through the lens of biblical prophecy? That's one part. And what practical steps do you think believers can take while sort of watching all of this unfold so we get a better understanding of what's really happening there?
So I personally try and stay away from prophecy, and I'll explain to you why I do.
Okay.
Um, because I think one of the things that has happened historically is when a religious leader speaks about this is what's prophesied in this text, and
Right.
then it doesn't happen, or it doesn't happen the exact same way. And it doesn't bring people to become deeper believers. It doesn't bring people to God. And my job at the end of the day is to help people deepen their awareness of their own relationship with God.
Yeah.
So that's why I just personally
Yeah.
stay away from prophecy. Um,
Right.
I think these are prophetic times, but I kind of stay away from going into that arena for that reason. Because if you know,
Interesting.
if
Okay.
if if you're wrong, I mean, then you've turned people off from God. You
Yeah.
just invalidate
That's a
the whole thing.
discipline. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a
So
discipline that you exercise as a rabbi, is sort of your integrity.
I just,
And that's, yeah, that's really important, isn't it, for you?
yeah, for me it is. And so I kind of
Yeah.
stay away from, I'm aware of all sorts of things. I'm aware, as an example, of Christian scriptures. I try not to do a lot of commentary on Christian scriptures because I don't speak Greek. Um, this is, and I know enough to know how the Hebrew scriptures are mistranslated so often because people don't
Yes.
understand the Hebrew. So I kind of stay up,
Yeah.
but I am totally aware of the parallels between the need for vaccinations and the vaccination passport.
Yeah.
And just, we were the one synagogue in California that never closed during COVID. We streamed and we had live
Yeah.
services. We never closed.
Yeah.
I'm aware of the
Yeah.
parallels of the mark and it having to have that. I mean, I've talked to pastors. So look, there's the mark,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
or you can't do business in Revelations, and there's the vaccine passport. Or you can't do business in the parallels. But I kind of stay
Right.
away from the prophetic part. Um,
Okay.
so in terms of that, I
I'm
think
curious about oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think the other part of your question of this war is you got to understand, or there's a great book that you may or may not know called The Five Languages of Love. Are you familiar with that book?
I've heard of it, but I've never read it.
Okay, so it's a great premise. And it's been done for
Mhm.
different traditions, and it's a great premise. The idea is that if I want to be if I want to be in a happy and healthy relationship, I need to know what fills my partner's love tank. Okay.
Okay, that
So
makes
as an
sense.
example,
Mhm.
I like having my back rubbed. Okay. Compliments mean nothing to me. Okay. I like touch. My wife likes compliments. Okay.
Mm.
So I need to know what makes her feel loved, and she needs to know what makes me feel loved, so you have a happy relationship.
Right.
Similarly, we need to know when someone declares us their enemy, we have to know what their values are. Well,
Mm.
Islam's values are very, very clear. They're in the Quran, repeated over and over and over. And it's about a worldwide caliphate. When the Ayatollah 47 years ago took over Iran, he didn't talk about how happy he was that now they're going to attack Israel. He didn't talk about Israel's land at all. What he talked about is we now have a holding place of a government for our Islamic regime. That's what the goal of the Quran is. And we need to understand we search for peace and prosperity. That's a Jewish value, a Christian value, a Catholic value, a Buddhist
Right.
value.
Yeah.
It's not an Islamic value. It's a different
Mm.
value system. And we need to understand that that's going on, and that's at the basis of all of these wars. In the
Mhm.
Quran, there are two things that you may or may not be familiar with, your audience may or may not be familiar with, that I think are important to understand. One is taqiyya, which is the idea that you can lie to the infidel. Okay?
Right.
An
Yeah.
infidel, that's the first thing. And let's define infidel from their point of view. If you were in Judaism and Christianity, 80 to 90% are 2 day a year Jews. They come Rosh Hashanah, you come Yom Kippur, the Christians go Christmas, Easter, right?
Yeah.
The other
Yeah.
10 to 20% are the actual theology of the tradition.
Right.
But we don't throw out the person who doesn't keep kosher, who only comes on Christmas.
Right.
In Islam, if you are not an observant Muslim, you are a kafir, you're an infidel.
Mhm.
So we think in our Western mindset all too often that the 80% of Muslims who do not observe the Quran religiously, that they're mainstream, and the 20% like Hamas and Hezbollah are extremists, when in fact it's the opposite. Hamas and
Mhm.
Hezbollah are the actual Islamic theology, and our friends who are more quote unquote moderate Muslims are actually the far left outliers, and they're considered infidels. And in the Quran, an infidel, whether it's a non practicing Muslim, a Jew, a Christian, or anyone else, Quran repeatedly says there are only three things that you do with an infidel: enslave, convert, or kill. Period.
Mm.
That is their theology. Combine that with the injunction in the Quran to be able to lie to the infidel to achieve your caliphate. And now add in a whole other piece called waqf, which is the obligation that if anything's been dedicated to Allah at any point, it is always Allah's. So if someone
Mm.
gives to your church $1 million and they build a building, and then 50 years from now, that building is sold for condos. No, the person who gave the donation doesn't get thrown out of heaven because it was something else. In Islam, if Abdullah builds a mosque or dedicates a land to Allah, and then it's not under Allah's control, he gets thrown out of heaven until his descendants retake that land.
Fascinating.
So think about
Wow.
that for a minute. When you have 500
Mhm.
people led by Zoran Mandami getting down in Times Square and saying, Allahu Akbar, this land is Allah's, they've dedicated Islam, they've dedicated New York City to Islam. And they not only have a right, they have an obligation to conquer it. So as Robert
Wow.
Spencer famously said, Islam is a one-way bridge when it comes to interfaith stuff.
Yeah. I've read several of his books. He's very, very knowledgeable on this topic, isn't he?
He's the
That's
expert.
yeah, that is there's a lot there that is totally new. My brain sort of scrambling
I'm
to
sorry.
digest all that. No, that this is brilliant stuff because I dare say very few people understand this in the way that you're describing it, but it almost turns our perception of Islam on its head. And what makes it more confusing is when we have people like our Prime Minister, Mark Carney, telling us that Muslim values are Canadian values. And we have, the heir to the British throne, the Prince of Wales, saying publicly that Islam is the religion of peace. All of this is very confusing. Is that by design?
I think it's by design and by ignorance and by fear.
No.
I think that's a big piece of it too, is that they want to have that Islamic audience. One of the things, if I as a rabbi, I keep politics entirely off the pulpit because that's not my job. So I don't talk politics
Right.
from the pulpit ever. And I'm pretty
Right.
politically active.
You saved that for the
I
podcast
can
and your
say that
radio show.
for everything else, and for my columns and for everything on the Rabbi's Table. So, but if I
Mm,
went into a temple and to services, and I said, everyone should vote for this proposition or that candidate, everyone would argue with me. Okay, they
mm,
just in
yeah,
principle they would argue with me. Okay,
yeah.
um, and they wouldn't necessarily listen or not listen when it comes to that. Conversely, if an imam gets into his mosque and he says, vote for candidate A, 100% of them will vote for candidate A.
And do they do that?
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
Oh, wow.
And there's lots of video that's been done by Angela Vanderplume, by Amy Mack, by Laura Loomer, I think, to some, but really by Amy, by Angela, does a lot of the research, where you see CARE, Council of American Islamic Relations, which Florida, thank God, declared as a terrorist organization, which is true, um, going out and saying this is what we need to do so we can change the laws. We need to create Islamic lawyers who will actually change legislation. Our clerics who will tell who to vote, and that's why people pander to them. That's why politicians are pandering to them, because if they pander
Mm,
to our tradition, look, there's an old saying: 2 Jews equals 3 opinions, 4 synagogues, and 5 rabbis. Right? Um, and that's not true in the Islamic tradition. So these
yeah.
politicians are pandering for what they know is a block of votes. And they're scared.
Mm,
They're scared of being called Islamophobe, which is a word made up by the Muslim Brotherhood as a
yeah.
PR kind of stunt. They're scared of all these things, and so they're acting. I mean, Tommy Robinson is doing this coming weekend. He's doing his Unite
Yeah.
the Kingdom march in London, where they're expecting
Hmm.
2 million people. Um, we're not aware necessarily, unless you really are doing research. Most Americans aren't aware that in the same way that it's happened in England, throughout America, and I don't know Canada, but I'm going to assume there as well, there are these
Yeah.
Sharia communities popping up.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
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 And then
Yeah.
it's no police
Um,
can't go, and they live by Sharia law, which means if you
yeah.
want to have sex with a
Yeah.
9-year-old, have sex with a 9-year-old.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? Uh,
Yeah. Well, we've even have our government is considering legislation that would essentially codify Islamophobia. But I expect you know more about it than I do, but I see that as essentially a leftist psyop. It's a spear. It's a cudgel.
it's
It's not there to actually protect Islam.
no.
But that's how far it's gone.
And why would you protect Islam anyhow?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
haven't declared that there are enemies. They have declared that we are theirs. It goes back to Golda Meir. She made a great statement when she was prime minister. She said, she was talking about the Arabs and Israelis and the fights
Yeah.
and the wars. And she said, if the Arabs put down all their weapons, we would have peace tomorrow. If Israel put down all its weapons, God forbid there'd be no Israel tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's a different
I
value
think
system.
yeah,
It's,
that's vivid. That
it's,
puts a real exclamation point on it, doesn't
it
it?
really, it's not
Yeah.
Canadian values. It's not
No.
American values.
No.
It's
No.
just not, at least from what I know of
Yeah.
Canada, which is
Yeah.
all pretty much
Yeah.
big things.
It is, and of course, we share this tradition, right? Our in our law, it's coming from the same source. I have to ask you though. I'd be remiss if I didn't do this. You mentioned you had Dinesh D'Souza on your show. Did you talk about his film, The Dragon's Prophecy, based on Mr. Khan's book? I know you. I respect what you said about prophecy, but did you talk about his that film? And if so, what did you think of The Dragon's Prophecy?
Well, we really didn't talk about it because I couldn't find a copy to watch. So
Oh, okay.
So we really didn't talk about it much. We spent a lot of time on Sharia law, on the Sharia communities.
Okay.
He actually gave the greatest quote I've ever heard when he was talking about this is Dinesh saying it when he's talking about the woke right. And he said that watching Candace Owens is like watching midget bowling. It's so ludicrous. You can't imagine it, but there you are.
He's a brilliant wordsmith,
Oh,
isn't he? Yeah.
I just, and they go, you're eating a cheeseburger and fries, and then you turn around and they're throwing a midget down the lane to hit pins, and it's
Yeah.
so ridiculous and so ludicrous, but you can't take your eyes off it. That was
Yeah.
his quote. He's
Yeah.
brilliant. Yeah, we
Yeah.
really didn't, because and the reason is we got lost in a lot of other things, and that I never
Yeah.
brought it up because I could not find a copy of the film to watch in time. So, and we
Yeah.
spent a lot. I
Well,
also want to spend a lot of time with the whole issue of lawfare and the police state.
Yeah. Well, you
Yeah.
could spend all day talking with Dinesh D'Souza, and it would all be worthwhile. Anyway, I want to talk to you about, we've touched a little bit on some of your advocacy in the realm of religious liberty and civil disobedience. And you mentioned, I think you sort of referenced some of the past struggles you've been involved with regarding religious lockdowns, and some of your comments on religious leaders suing the government over immigration. So where do you kind of draw the line between respectful civil engagement, which you obviously support, um, and necessary civil disobedience when kind of state policies conflict with religious doctrine? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Like,
it
where do you
does.
kind of draw the line between when it's, versus, lawfare, or abusing the justice system versus accessing justice properly in order to defend, constitutional rights and religious liberty?
So I look to my guidance to text. I'm a text guy.
Okay.
Torah, Tanakh, the Bible, the Talmud, are commentaries. I'm a text guy.
Right.
Um, and there's this teaching in the Talmud. It says, "Dinah de malchuta dinah." The law of the land is the law. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
However, that concept is very, very specific. The law of the land is always the law, unless it's not being exercised equally upon all groups. Then the law of the land is not the law. And unless it goes directly against a theological teaching of our tradition. So if the law
Mhm.
of the land is to bow down unto an idol, and everyone has to bow down to an idol, it's equal to all groups, but it's against our theology, I'm not going to bow down to an idol.
Right.
Um, so we don't, as I said, we were the one synagogue that did not close during
Mhm.
COVID, and we streamed for
Right.
anyone who wanted to. And I'll tell you later, the reason why is in February of 2020, when the virus was just starting, a woman came into uh, services, and she's in her 70s. And I said, Alicia, I'm really not comfortable with you being here. There's this virus. We don't know anything about it. She starts crying. She says, Rabbi, my mom died last week. I promised her whole life that I would come to temple after she died. Please don't send me away.
Mm. Mm.
And that
Yeah.
moment, I knew we weren't going to close.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
so I think we need to do that. We need to also step up when we see anyone else, any other theology being attacked. So a few years ago, the Los Angeles Dodgers were they for years had a gay pride night.
Oh, I saw this. Yes. Mocking the nuns.
They wanted to
Yes.
honor
Yeah.
the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, which is a drag queen group out of San Francisco that dresses up like nuns and uses crucifixes like sexual toys. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
act like they're doing sexual acts on icons of Jesus. Okay.
Yeah.
When I found out about that, I had a real problem with that, obviously. Now, it's not
Mhm.
my theology, it's not my religion, but it's an attack on a religion, which means this is an attack on all religions. So I wrote an article for
Interesting.
PJ about it. And um, that article was picked up by a number of people, including General Flynn and all sorts of other people who said, how come no priest is making a comment about this, but a rabbi is? And that ended up leading to a demonstration at Dodger Stadium. They disinvited this drag queen group, then they re-invited them because there was so much pressure from the gay side.
Mhm.
And there ended up being a demonstration at Dodger Stadium where they invited me to be there, along with some Catholics and Christians leaders who were both political and spiritual, religious leaders. They asked me to be there to speak, and it was an honor to do so. So I think going back to the part of the heart of your question, what can we do? Ours is a tradition of faith and action, not
Right.
one or the
Yeah.
other.
Right.
And I think we need to do both. We need to have faith in God without
Mhm.
question.
Mhm.
And we need to act righteously. When we see evil in the Talmud, there's a teaching if you see a crime being committed across the river and you do nothing to try to prevent it, you're guilty of the crime. If we see
Wow.
any religious people being attacked, we have an obligation, as well as a privilege and a blessing, to defend them, to step up and say, this is wrong. It doesn't affect my life
Mhm.
directly. If you're going to have drag queens at Dodger
Mhm.
Stadium who look like nuns, that doesn't affect me, but it does.
Right.
It
Right.
really does. And we need to
Yeah.
step up and fight for each other.
Yeah. Wow. Speaking of defending, this is another thing I wanted to ask you about. The Second Amendment is under attack in the United States. In Canada, the federal government is trying to confiscate all of our guns. There's a successful gun confiscation program in Australia. You probably know in the 1990s. You did an episode with Sal Litvak in which you explored the spiritual obligation of self-defense, and I found this is really original and really interesting. And so, I'm wondering, could you explain how you address the tension between sort of pacifist interpretations of faith, some of which are drawn from Scripture, and the Jewish ethical imperative to protect life, especially in an era of increasing domestic and international violence? How do you sort of square the circle there?
So we are obligated to defend life. It
Right.
says in the Torah that the Torah, these laws, you are to live by them, not to
Mhm.
die by them. Okay, you are to live by them. That's the reason that during the Holocaust, when the Nazis would torture people, they'd say to the rabbi, urinate on the Torah, and the rabbi would say no,
Ah,
and they'd say, well, if you don't, we're going to kill this child. Okay, fine, because we're to live by the laws, not die by the laws.
right.
And
Yeah.
there are two rabbinic holidays, um, Purim and Hanukkah. And I'm going to use Hanukkah as the example. Hanukkah is about when the Seleucid Greeks wanted the Hebrews to bow down to their gods. They wanted to
Mhm.
destroy the Jewish people, their spirituality. And a rebellion was led by what are called the Maccabees today, the Hashmoneans.
Right.
Those were all priests. They were all Kohanim. And it was, we're not
Mm.
going to bow down to a Greek god. Um, when someone comes to attack you and you know they want to kill you physically, then you are obligated by Torah law, by the Talmud, by the Bible, to go out and defend yourself even preemptively. But it's not
Mhm.
just about physical death. The holiday of Purim is about their physical death. The holiday of Hanukkah is about them trying to destroy us, assimilate us, destroy us spiritually. That too can be a reason to go and have those kind of physical actions. In this
Mhm.
world today, if you're going to tell me my choice is either wear a Jewish symbol or get in a fight, I'm going to wear a Jewish symbol.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to
Mhm.
let you destroy who I am. My house was vandalized 4 times. And the first time it was vandalized, they took the mezuzah we have on Jewish doorways and they ripped it off. That next day when I found this out, I went and bought one that was huge, put on the doorway. Um, and
Bravo.
it's
Bravo.
and at Hanukkah, people put up Hanukkah lights or whatever at different times. I put up this big 10-foot inflatable dreidel. If you're not sure where the rabbi lives, here I am. Um,
Wow. Fantastic.
I'm not going to kowtow. And one of the things that we've learned historically is that kowtowing never works because the bully just keeps
Mm.
bullying. Alan Dershowitz made
Mm.
a great comment last week to me. He said October 7th, or the Israeli reaction to October 7th, was the result of 2,000 years of Jews taking pogroms, taking uh, beatings, taking persecutions, and not fighting back. And that's not going to ever happen again. It's not going to.
Interesting.
And Israel
Yeah.
has done it very carefully, but that's not going to happen. Um,
Mm.
they came in, they raped, they killed, they tortured, they kidnapped, all these things. We should not be. If that happened in Canada or in America, if Mexico had some group from Mexico had
Yeah.
done this to America, that area would have been leveled inside a week. If someone had done that to Canada, Canada would have leveled it inside a week.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But Israel's
You know
supposed to restrain us. No, you chose to come in and attack. Not even soldiers. They made a conscious decision to attack victims, and they're winning this war. And let me say
Mm.
why I say that. They've lost
Okay.
every battle,
Yeah.
but they're getting everything they wanted before the war.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
think about it. They're getting
Yeah.
everything. They've got the world supporting them. They've got
Mhm.
all this money coming into Hamas, all this aid coming into Hamas. Oh, we have to let Hamas do things. Oh, there has to be a Palestinian state. There's never been a Palestinian state in history. There is no king, country, language, stamp, coin, government. There is no such thing as Palestine. It was invented in 1964.
Yeah.
And prior to that, people were called Jordanians. They were called Egyptians. The whole region was called Philistania from the time of the Romans.
Right.
They called it, it's like saying the Midwest. They
Mhm.
call it,
Mhm.
but there was no state. There is no state of the Midwest. There was no state of Palestine. It included Israel, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, all the countries in the region. And then that region was still part of the Ottoman Empire, etc. Until it was
Mhm.
won, until the Brits won in World War One. And they made these distinctions and put a couple of
Mhm.
families in charge of a couple of these regions, and the rest were called British protectorates. People say, oh, there was a Palestinian passport in 1925. No, there wasn't. There was a British passport for the British protectorate, the British mandate of Palestine. It was,
Right.
but you know what? Since October 7th, they're winning the war, aren't they?
Yeah.
Because
That's a
Americans,
perspective,
you
yeah.
know,
That's a perspective that I did not understand until I read Douglas Murray's most recent book on October 7th, essentially, and, he makes that point in the book, and, you make it very well also, and it's something that, it's very shocking, isn't it? It almost feels like, there's a level of manipulation that's going on, and, of course, nobody likes to feel manipulated, but how do we not do that? How do we avoid being manipulated by these people and by their ideology? How do we do that?
I think we do it through education. Part of the challenge is that you have these Islamic nations
Right.
that a number of them have a lot of money, more money than the
Mhm,
rest of the
mhm.
world on a certain level, right? Because of the oil.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So they can afford to influence, to pay for influence in a way
mhm,
that we can't. I don't know who said it, the idea that a lie travels around the world before the truth gets out of bed.
right.
We need to educate. We need to do what you're doing. That's why I
Mm,
started to do this. We need to
yeah,
educate people about the realities.
yeah,
Um, and the problem is you have these iconic figures. They become literally idol, like Carlson and Candace and these people who
mhm,
are playing to the lowest common denominator. And people idolize them. It's
mhm,
dangerous and it's false gods and it's everything else. And I think we have to have faith that God will take care of us. And
yeah,
we have to act and say, you know what? Call them out every time you see one.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
Speak the truth. Yeah,
Yesterday, I
yeah.
came out of a market, and outside the market, there were people asking for money for uh, Doctors Without Borders.
Mm,
And I said, what do you know about Doctors Without Borders? Oh, it's a great organization we're part of. I said, okay. And I went up to the manager and I said, you need to remove them from your property. They said they know you. They said that they're here with your approval. You need to remove me. He goes, well, why? I said, because Doctors Without Borders is actually a funneling arm financing, and it's both financing and financed by CARE, pro-Palestinian, it's pro-Islamic regime,
mm,
etc. So came down, they removed him. And I said, you guys said you're students. Where are your students? Oh, we're not really students. I said, you're not students? You're doctors? No. We work for the marketing company.
ah,
Um, and they're in doctor scrubs and stuff like this. Now
mm,
I didn't need to take the extra 5 to 10 minutes and do it, but I knew what was going on was wrong. So they're
yeah,
asking people coming out of a market for money. They're in scrubs. They're saying Doctors Without Borders. We heal people everywhere in the world. Great lie. And they're taking their
yeah,
money and they're giving it to organizations like, UNRWA and CARE and things like that.
yeah,
It's a scam. And we need every one of us can do personal actions like that. When we
mhm,
see something wrong, we can call it out. When someone says, um, you know, queers for Palestine, right? They have holding a big sign, queers for Palestine. It's like, excuse me, Do you understand what the Quran teaches about queers? Well, we're for Palestine. Really? Why?
Yeah.
Because they want you dead.
Yeah.
So
They
understand
want to
that
throw you
clearly.
off a building.
The, and my favorite is Jewish queers for Palestine. It's like you're an auction item that could be bid. Let's throw you off the building. We'll take you back up. We'll throw you off again. They're and we need to educate those useful idiots for that
Yeah.
side. And they've
Yeah.
infiltrated the educational system is one of the problems. I'm dealing right now with an issue with one high school that was teaching in an AP history class. Um, it's the one of the students, two of the students' families called me, said, "Rabbi, help!" And they're teaching the Muslim Brotherhood map of Israel as part of the class.
Mm. Yeah.
So I spoke with the principal. I'm dealing with the college board right now about how they interact with Jewish students who can't take the SAT on Saturdays. Now, hopefully, they're going to change their positions, but this is we have to, every time we see an injustice, I think it's incumbent upon everyone of faith. It doesn't matter if you're Jewish or Christian, Catholic or Buddhist. I think we need to remember that injunction from the Talmud that if we see a crime being committed and don't do anything to try to stop it, we're guilty of the crime. That's the action we need to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that includes everything, what's going on in New York. It includes what's going on in these Sharia communities. It includes all of it.
Yeah. Well, that is a great place to leave off. We've taken up quite a bit of your time. What a pleasure. What a joy it's been to, to
It's been
talk
great
with
to
you
have to.
folks.
Yeah, I'd love to speak
Yeah.
more, and you're terrific and insightful stuff. So,
Thank,
whatever I can do, to help with gray matters and everything else.
yeah. Well, it's been a joy sitting with you folks. We've been talking with Rabbi Michael Barclay. He's the host of radio show and podcast, The Rabbi's Table, Dialogue, Not Debate. As you could probably tell from watching or listening to this, I've watched or listened to several episodes, and I just think it's wonderful. Learned so much. And I want to close off though, as we always do, with something from our reading list. Tell us about your book and where people can find
I
it.
did it years ago, and it's going to be republished again, God willing, from a different publisher.
Great,
Um,
great.
and I have 3 other books that Publius is trying to find, that AJ Rice and Kimberly are trying to find
Oh,
publishers for
great.
right now. But the
Yeah.
book that I wrote is called Sacred Relationships, and it's a biblical commentary on the writings section of the Bible. I had the unique blessing of being endorsed by everyone from the Vatican to rabbis to Oprah's guru to the Chancellor of Oxford. And it's a biblical, it's a
Wonderful.
commentary on that section of the Hebrew Scriptures, Psalms, Job, Lamentations, etc.
Wow.
That these are
Great.
really self-help books. These are really
Mhm.
each of these books in the Bible. The thread that ties them together is that
Mhm.
they're all about how to experience God in different types of relationships. And I think we need to find God in our relationships.
Well,
With
that's a book
people, with
that I
everything.
definitely want to read. Where can people find it? Is it available right now?
I think it's the rights have gone back.
Okay.
I think there's still used copies or
Okay.
up on Amazon. They can go, they can reach it. Hopefully, it'll be republished this year,
Yeah.
either under the same title or under a different title.
Yeah.
And then there are a couple other books that AJ will hopefully get book deals on. One is about the
Yeah.
Jewish take on abortion. One is about how to create, develop, and maintain a healthy relationship from a spiritual point of view. And then
Wow.
I do
Great
writing.
stuff.
As I say, I've written over 2.5 million words at this point since
Yeah.
October 7th.
So if people want to find more of your writings, where's the best place for them to go?
If they go to the rabbistable.com,
Okay.
the first thing they'll see is a page that has podcasts.
Right.
But if they go on the menu, the 3-line menu or whatever it is, I'm basically a when it comes to technology, I'm a troglodyte. So, but the 3 dots, whatever, the menu, they can find writings, they can find video of me speaking, they can find, I've done multiple commentaries on every Torah portion. They can find my articles on PJ Media. They can go to PJ Media and Google my name, Rabbi Michael Barclay, but everything is sort of can also be funneled through the rabbistable.com. Front page that they will go to is, when they go to that, will be the podcast. But if they click on the menu, they'll see all sorts of other articles, documents, commentaries, all of the emails that have been sent out since October 7th, I think are up there. Although I'm not 100% sure because I don't manage that website. a lot of different video, a lot of different things they can follow on Twitter at the Rabbi's Table.
Wonderful. We'll
To see
provide
things
all
that come out.
those links.
Oh,
One
you're very
last
kind.
thing before you go. One last request. Since you
Anything.
are a rabbi, I wonder if you would mind leaving our viewers and listeners with maybe a quotation from scripture or perhaps a prayer
Well,
to
let's do.
just to
How
close
about if
out.
we do both in one fell swoop?
Great, fantastic.
How about that? So, 3,700 years ago, to put it in context, God says to Moses to tell his brother Aaron that Aaron is to put God's name on the people, and God will bless them.
Mm,
And Aaron's descendants are called Kohanim, which means priests. It's actually a marker on our Y strand of the chromosome. There's actually a genetic marker for all of us who are Kohanim. When you see a Kohen and they put their hands up like this, the reason that the hands are like this, remember God's name has 4 letters, Yud, Hey, Vav, and Hey. So
mhm.
1 letter, 2 letters, 3 letters, 4 letters. So when we bless someone, we go like that. And that's where the prayer comes from. It's both a prayer and a blessing. And as a Kohen, maybe that's the simplest thing to do for all of us.
Wow, wonderful.
Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God always bless you and always protect
Wow,
you.
wonderful.
May God lift up his countenance, being kind, gracious, compassionate with you in every place, space, and time. Yisa Adonai panav lecha, ve'yoseim lecha. Shalom. May God bless you with good health, good mental health, good physical health, good emotional health, good spiritual health, with wisdom, with courage, with parnasa, with prosperity, with fun, with joy, with love, with courage, with patience, with strength, with gentleness, with fun, with joy, with love, and always, always for all of us, with peace. Ken Yiratzon, may this be God's will. So, amen. Yeah, hopefully that helps.
Amen. Well, that was wonderful. I love stories about Moses. I was identified with Moses because we both shared a speech impediment. I was a stutterer as a boy. So Moses was a great inspiration to me. So thank you for all of that. What a great way to leave off this conversation. Thank you so much for being our special guest here. It's been a real joy having you on the program, and we wish you much continued success with all the incredible work that you're doing. You're such an inspiration, not only to your own flock, but I mean to all of us who really want to learn more. We want to understand better what's going on in the world, especially on a spiritual level. And you've done such a great job of doing that today. So thanks for being our special guest here.
Thank you for having me, and thank you again, and God bless you and all of your audience for all that you're doing to make the world a better place. Truly. Thank you.
Hungry for truth beyond the television? Well, extend the conversation with Grey Matter online. Grey Matter's insights continue in your inbox. Subscribe to our Substack newsletter where we dive deeper into the spiritual battles facing Canadian families today. Equip yourself to stand firm in your faith and lead with godly wisdom. Join our growing community of truth seekers at substack.com/Grey Matter newsletter. Subscribe today and never miss the Canadian perspective on what matters most. In a world where truth is under siege, legal expert Leighton Gray's book, Lies, Laws, and Liberty, delivers the intellectual firepower you need. 17 powerful essays tackle our most pressing challenges, from free speech to family values. Don't just witness cultural upheaval, help shape what comes next. This isn't just another book, it's your roadmap to becoming a joyful warrior for truth, family, and freedom. Order on Amazon today and arm yourself with wisdom for the battles that matter most. The battle has always been over people and ideas, but they're just the targets. The real enemies are spiritual principalities and powers. Grey Matter's purpose is to reach out with the voice of Christian truth to men between 18 and 44. We believe that these sons and fathers are Christ's inheritance. Join us financially and help us to speak so Canadians hear truth that sets men free and brings families to Jesus. Contact us by email at greymatterconnect@gmail.com or mail us at Post Office Box 2436, Fort Macleod, Alberta, postal code T0L0Z0. Thank you for your support.